everybody. We're at the Local Design Circle live stream. I am Andrei Grosu from Local Design Circle. I'm here with Mihai Șovăială, Romanian artist and photographer based in Switzerland, and with Ludovic Balland, graphic and book designer and also a photographer. I would like to start by asking each one of you to present a little bit about yourselves, about what you do. And I was thinking that Mihai could start, and after that we can go with Ludovic.
Sure. My name is Mihai Șovăială. I'm a Romanian artist, studied photography in Bucharest, finished with a bachelor degree in 2016. And then I continue my studies in Germany, Leipzig, as a postgraduate student, where I graduated in 2020. I mostly work with photography, archives, and printed matters, especially books.
Thanks.
Hi. So I'm graphic designer, photographer, and I do mostly books since 2003. I studied in the early 90s in Basel at the School of Design, Schule für Gestaltung auf Deutsch. And I started photographing even before studying graphic design, when I still was at high school. So photographing was always part of my life or my work. And since 2006, I founded my own office, Typography Cabinet, and we are focused on mainly architectural monographs, books mainly, and more books that we conceive from scratch, including producing content and images. So it has changed a lot in editorial design. Also the role of our role has changed a lot. So that's it.
Thank you for presenting yourselves, and thank you for being here today at this live stream. So the topic that we're going to talk about, or one of the topics, is what's the relationship, or where do graphic and editorial design meet with photography and also with architecture, and how do they blend, how do they meet, and where is the line between them also? And as we were talking before this live stream, we identified these two scenarios where in the first scenario there is a photographer and a designer, and they work together, and the second scenario is when the same person makes both sides. So I was thinking about starting with the first scenario, where we have two different people, one as in the role of the photographer and one in the role of the designer. And I just wanted to ask you both, how do they work together? How does the designer work together with the photographer? And more importantly, I think the most interesting part is, how do they build trust in each other? How do you, the photographer, trust that the designer is doing the best he can with the photographs from you, or how do you as a designer handle or see the pictures and try to make the best out of them? And I was thinking maybe Mihai could start from the perspective of the photographer and tell us, I don't know, how did you work on editorial maybe projects, or how do you work with photography and with other designers, and how do you
No, it's a very interesting relationship between a photographer and a graphic designer most of the time, except when you do everything. But for me, everything started when I realized early on in my bachelor studies that I'm not able to present my images in a gallery. And the idea was to get out of this zone and create printed matter, books that can represent something outside of a gallery space. And by doing this, I kind of took out the images from a digital world and translate them in an object. And by this, I also learned what means to to work with an editing, what means to pair images, and how this changed the initial meaning of one image. Of course, when I first did my first book, they were like very personal, and what I wanted to communicate to the others, it didn't work out because they were too personal. They were working only for myself. And so the next step was to engage working with a graphic designer or with somebody that has an external view upon the work. And that was when the dialogue started between me and Alin Cincă to exchange something about images, about ideas, about how you can translate something, how can you build an editing that is available for everybody, not only for yourself, and also how you develop an editing that also lasts, also even when you finish the book. How you can do an editing that is not finished once you understood the concept or you understood the book while shuffling, keeping an editing alive. And I think that was possible only by having this by having this exchange with a graphic designer. And I, for myself, I also do books for other artists and curators, but there I can detach. So there I can work also with images and try to develop and extend the content. Whether when I work for myself is very, it's more complicated. Let's put it like this.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and it depends a bit from what time we look at this relationship. I started working for magazines in the late 90s, and the relationship to photographers was completely different because it was always editorial photography that's related to a given topic, and you have to produce a story. So the images, even though they might be beautiful or working in itself, they always are charged for the storytelling, which create a certain dependency that I found very interesting in the field of magazine design. But as soon I moved to books, something new started. There was a second phase where photography was still in the duty of a content, in the duty of a book, but could become more independent in a sense. So my books are in between, because I try to make photography or to work with photographers in the sense of giving them a free space regarding a house, regarding a city, regarding maybe an investigation about certain aspect of architecture. But it's always in a relationship, it's always in a dialogue, it's always connected. That's my point of view in what the book is trying to tell, and less giving the complete voice or stream to the image, which this would become the third phase, doing photography books, which is again a completely different field. And I didn't make much. I did one photography book. It was relatively complicated experience. But yeah, I believe that the third object, the photography object, I think now it becomes more actual, because I also believe that the books has become a new space. The book is a space in which we can experiment things that doesn't need to be reproduced on internet, doesn't need to be reproduced on or put in galleries. That means that the book is also exclusive. And from that point of view, if the book is exclusive, the role of the photographers and also maybe the designer is completely different. We won a lot of independence, freedom, a lot of freedom. I think.
Yeah, I think it's nice how this relationship between the photographer and the designer is not only a relationship between them, but a relationship between them and the final object, the book object, and how their work can go towards this final object and can put it put that object on the first place. So it's not the photographer on the first place, is not a designer on the first place, but is the final outcome that has the most importance in all this in all this work that it's put out there. And do you think that who has more ownership on the usage? Maybe not ownership is the right word, but who has a better grip of the photographs in a book? So it's more important how the photographer sees the pictures and how he thinks that they can transmit one idea, or is it the designer who puts them in a certain order, or maybe aligns them in a different way? Which one of them contributes more to the way that the final object is seen, or are they equal on this part?
I would say it's equal. No, I think it's important to, of course, to have a good project, to have good images, and images that can be, that they can say something and be relevant, because it's also a relevancy of printing something. Should be printed? Should we print? Should we, consume paper? Is it important that this book should be printed, or it can just stay on a shelf? So I think the project, it should be very relevant on the side of an artist. But I think it's also very important for to leave this content to a graphic designer and to work with him, and to have the to be open to change the material, to be open to maybe do crops, to do zoom in, zoom out, to print full spread, to do color inversions, to try to do different sequencings, editings, arrange the image on a page, try papers, try formats. I think that's the role of a designer, that should push a bit the work, and it should translate the work into a material object that is also in accordance with the content.
Yes, I think it's equal. I think it's also very complicated. It's also, on my point of view, depends if it's about the photography in itself, and the book is more like a platform, something that helps to showcase, or showcase simply, not help it, and or if the book is a medium in itself, and tell something also about the book, because the book has certain rules, has a format, has a sequence, as you said. So these aspects are extremely important. So you can take the same image or the same series of image, and that can generate two complete different outputs, only because of the amounts of pages. And so I believe that the mix of designing, editing, photography is an extremely sensitive topic. And yeah, some images are already telling so many stories that I think the book should step back.
Okay.
And in other cases, the photography is helping or supporting statement and ideas that the book should take, but the book is in the front, kind of become more, has the role of telling that story, and the image is supporting the book. So that would be two different relationships.
Yeah,
I will just add that I think it's also very important that the aspect of graphic design into bookmaking, it should not overshadow the content, because I saw many good books with good content, but they were over designed in a way. So I think it's also very important to have a good translation and an honest translation, and not taking over for both roles in a way or another.
I mean, yeah, if you go in the history of photography books, there was really only a a sheet of paper, a beautiful lithography, a great print, and no folio, no caption. So that was the pure photography book. There is no single information. Is a completely dedication to the photography. So yeah, that relationship has changed. The role of the book has become much more important. And I think, as I said before, that certain images can be produced only for a book and not for a gallery, not for a client, but for the book. So I think that the role of the book has, in my opinion, have more change as the role of the photography in a sense. The photography as always was, I don't know, maybe you can...
Yeah.
It has become digital, but it's still an image, and I think the book can offer much more today.
Maybe that's also something that we can address, that a book, it's also an art. It's an art of an object of art. It's an experience that you have at home, and it can really help you understanding the work of an artist maybe in a better way as in a gallery and exhibition. So
the book and editorial design, I think it's the original user experience, if you can say that. And this reminds me of something really interesting that another designer told to me. You or some of our listeners may know him, Raymond Bobar. He told at some point that good editorial design should be invisible, so it should let you see the content in its true nature. I think it's good for some books. It's not so good for other types of books, but sometimes good design is somewhat invisible. It's really interesting how I think it's really interesting how editorial design and the way you use pictures inside the book can change their meaning only by so small things, like the positioning of a photograph could change the whole vibe of that photograph. And I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really great when you have a photographer and a good designer that work together, and they can manage to have a good connection and understand each other really well. And I think it's really important for the collaboration to work. I want to mention now about the book American Readers at Home, which in 2020 it had the new cut. It was released, the new cut, 3 years later after the first edition. It's a book about how do American citizens consume the news. And Ludovic, you were the author, the editorial director, the photographer, and you also did the photography editing. So this book brings us to the next scenario that I mentioned earlier, when these two roles of the photographer and the designer are blended in, it's the same person that does that. And I'm really curious about, I think the most important things in these two roles are the mindset, because a photographer, when he takes the pictures, has one mindset, and he's looking for certain things. And maybe as a designer, you look at those pictures in a different mindset, or you find something else about them maybe. And I wanted to ask you how, if you detach from the other role when you made the book, or how does one influence the other? How does Ludovic the photographer influences Ludovic the designer, or how do these two roles meet each other?
Yeah, I think it's the same. It's the same for me. It's the same job. Is more about the attitude regarding a topic, regarding content. In that case, I proposed the content and the concept. So yeah, I decided to use photography as an investigation medium, and also the book as a way of understanding and getting into the details and getting into these readers I've met during 4 months. So I can't divide the two roles. I believe nevertheless, that the dialogue is needed if you do a book. So I didn't did that book alone. I had many people helping me. I had also someone very next to me that did that we did together the image editing. So there's maybe a bit of a general blend that people think you did it alone. Of course not. But I can't divide these two jobs. For me, it has the same basically. It's and also it's not about the images in itself. Now for that book, it was the images and these interviews, and both of them create a new product which was a mix between newspaper and a photo book, which is again something that didn't exist before. And also the journalists couldn't really like sort it out. They said like, but what is it? I mean, is it a photo book, or is it where should we put it on the shelf? And I said, yeah, that's maybe exactly the topic, that we want to move on of that, these typical category. Again, you asking me, I am a photographer, I am a book designer. I don't know. I want to investigate. I want to go that deep in content that I will not only receive something, I will go in the field, I will shoot myself, I will shoot the topics, the landscape, the people, to better understand, maybe only just to better understand what is it about. And even maybe not using these images, also a possibility eventually not using them. That's okay, that's fine. But it's part of finding out what is the content, and maybe after all these steps, finding out what the books want, and at the end also what I want to do inside this field. Because I think this is the beauty of doing books, that it's never one image, is never one spread, it's always a sequence. So you can't, as you said, you don't want to finish a book, or a book is not like once it's printed, the work is done and you stop photographing. You continue your topic about construction site. So me the same, I'm continuing doing pictures for buildings now, more related to architecture. So this is editing is a never-ending process, I would say. It has different focus, and that is what I try, mix typologies, which I have the feeling it's time to do. We have changed our habit to read, we have changed so many habits also to consume images. So the book can also reflect maybe these changes that will never be or stay visible on the screen in internet. You never go back reading an article that has been published 5 years ago or even 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never thought about that, but yeah, it's really true. Once you read an article online, you never go back to it. But when you have a book, yeah, you go through it many times a year maybe, or yeah.
The relationship to books has completely changed. I think it has become more documents. They are unique. The photographs I did for my trip in America, they were only published in that book, so also online. But then we shut down the web page because the project was done. So the book is a mirror.
Yeah, very nice. Also, Mihai, you also do some editorial design and design work. And how is it in your case? Do you feel that Mihai the designer is influenced by Mihai the photographer, or do you I don't know, is it maybe easier for you to work with other people's photographs than to work with your own photographs? Or how do you?
Yeah, so I did a couple of books that were dealing mostly with photography. So it was also an exercise for me to understand the content and try to work with and rearrange it, or finding a scenario for it. And it was very easy to do that because these were not my works. So I could do everything that crossed my mind, sort of. And it's much easier. I mean, I can tell you, it's much easier to work with other pictures than with your pictures. This is a fact.
Fact, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you are more open to try stuff, to see different formats, to see different crops, to maybe blow up the pictures. I don't know, because you have a detachment
from them. Yeah.
Which for my pictures I barely have it.
For me, it's also so that the concept of the book more and more is producing the images. It's not like me coming with a bunch of photographs. Maybe we can do a book. Like mostly it happened with photographers, right? You don't knock my door and say, Ludo, maybe let's do that book. On my side, now talking about architecture, the concept is the main core, and the concept of the book, the editorial concept, can already like produce all the images in the sense of what we're gonna do, what we're gonna shoot, how we're gonna shoot it, and even maybe how we're gonna be edited. So for me, the book has become kind of a magic box, and inside I am free. As soon as I can also handle these parameters on my own, there's another aspect which is so important, is the speed. American readers at home, if I would have done it with someone else, would have taken so much time. Because I did it on my own, it took me 3 months. Of course, with 2 great people around me and a team, etc. But the speed and the decision making is something that can also kill the quality of the material, can also kill the essence. When you can be fast, decide on your own, I think that helps to be more straightforward and making less compromise. Talking with photographers, I did, as I said, I had one experience that was really complicated, and not many others, because I did only one photographic books, but my other experience with photographers doing together books, it's not a compromise, but it's a dialogue, and somehow in the middle of that dialogue, you make a decision that fits the content of the image, the expectations of the photographer, expectation of the printed quality, and of course my expectation as a book designer, and that's okay, that's fine, but that already shifts the concept somewhere that can become less visible. And more, I believe also that books should be, as a concept, not a weapon, but
yeah. No, I think it's a good point. I think it's very important to not work with what is given. So if a photographer comes at you with a bunch of photographs and he wants to ask you to work with it, I think it's very important to extend that working and understanding of, and not just placing images, in a grid and print it. I think this is the thing that I said at the beginning of relevancy, and why it should be a book in the end. Maybe it shouldn't be a book, or maybe these images are not yet ready to be printed. I mean, what it means to have a project, and what means to print it now or in 20 years. Why do you have to push a book into a production in a very short time of frame just because you want to have it out? Maybe it's gonna gain more sort of
relevancy or importance, or
in 20 years, in 25 years. It's also this kind of, when you I work mostly with analog photography, and when I shoot, I don't develop the films immediately, so I always forget what I shoot, and then I discover the images again, and that's a sort of a surprise for me, and seeing that some of the images that I took, and I had expectations, I had high expectations, they weren't so good, but then I see that the other ones are maybe coming better in combining them or looking at them together in a book.
It's like
So
rediscovering them all over again and reliving the
it's also
thing.
this idea of not seeing immediately what you've done. And
Do you think we should do the book today and printing in 5 years? Maybe that'll be a new editorial
it's also a
timeline.
position, it's also it's a strategy that an artist has to build and has to acknowledge.
I mean, I think you're right. You're talking about the selection, and the selection is something that for all photographers has always been the most crucial work, right? So I can also imagine that the book can propose another selection of images as the images would be exhibited, for instance, because the book again allowed some images to be inside while in the gallery or in the exhibition they don't work much. So the book has become independent and give the photography, I think, completely new relevancy, if we want to talk about that. So
from the designer role, do you prefer to, when working on a book, like let's say, do you prefer to get a larger batch of images and make the selection you, the designer, or do you prefer to get a selection made by the photographer who took the pictures?
I think it's much better if you can do it on your own. And when we work with photographer, always first, or we in the office, we do a proposal and we send it to the photographer, and we start a discussion. So, as Mihai said, I think having the advantage of standing back definitely open up new solutions and open up new pairing, open up new constellations, open up a new storytelling even maybe. So that in that sense it's very important to first close the door, let the photographer screaming outside and only later on start a discussion. It's always interesting what are the criteria, why you said that image will be necessary for the book, and I tell you no, it's not necessary in the sequence now, or it's not necessary because we already had that image 2 pages before, but this you don't know maybe. So it's it's a different way of working. Can you imagine not willing to see the sequence, the final sequence, and give me the complete responsibility? Be
not
honest.
really.
Yes.
No.
Okay, why not? I'm curious, why not? Because
I think
of your
I would
attachment
be able to do that if I already had an experience with a graphic designer that I trust. So if I know somebody that I work with already and we did something together and I trust him, I can do this actually easily because I trust him. What you said at the beginning is it's a trust relationship. I think when you start working with a new designer, a graphic designer, as a new client or so, I think you want to see where do you meet, where do you stand, where you can optimize the process.
But also if let's say you give him full control, so as a new client you go to a designer and you ask him, I want this book made, and here is a large batch of images, you just select what you think, and if that designer, the outcome that he delivers, it's really great, it's better than you ever expected, doesn't that build more trust between the two parties than if the two parties had a dialogue during the creation of the output?
I don't like this word trusting. I mean, you should trust. You should trust your work, not the designer. Trust your work. That's important. The same as I trust my books, that they tell the story that fits with that content. Of course, dialogue, but trust in that sense that the one would be more able as as the other one, that is not the topic.
Mm-hmm.
And also because the books are independent, has become more independent, is go maybe to 3 graphic designers and produce 3 different books with the same bunch of pictures. Why not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't mind. So it's two different things, and we should celebrate the images and the bookmaking, but not trying to always go in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I don't want to talk with you. But it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
To separate the two of them. Yeah.
And most of the books that are really strong in terms of photography, I believe they work anyway, no matter if you have changed the graphic design, and not that every graphic designer is doing a good book, but if the pictures are strong enough, they will always survive.
Mm-hmm. They will have enough power on their own to to live through everything. Yeah.
They are doing the job already.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So now I think we can move on to the next part of the live stream, which is the thing that brought the two of you together here in Bucharest. So it's a workshop made by Foy magazine and the two of you. So maybe if you want to tell us a bit about the workshop that it's going on.
Sure. So everything started from Ludovic, so you should start telling, but I can make the...
Better you talk.
So Ludovic was invited to have an interview in Revista Foy,
mm-hmm.
together with Andrei Mihai. And I think then you had a sort of an exchange, and the idea came up to make a workshop in Bucharest. And since I knew Ludovic from my study times, and we've been also working together in Switzerland, he decided to do this workshop together. This is how it started.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the relationship of designers and photographers, that's now the best example that, both of us are leading this workshop, and I think it's a great experience until now. But let's go into details.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so it's a workshop that we are doing at Galeria Posibilă. We work together with 3 students and fresh graduate students from 3 students from photography department, 3 students from graphic design department, and 3 students from University of Architecture, Ioan Mincu. This is also something that we thought together, combining the disciplines of graphic design, architecture, and photography as a way of expanding the way of we work together.
And how does the architecture fit into this?
Well, most of my projects are dealing with architecture. I'm very interested in architecture, especially in Romanian architecture, but not only. And I think for Ludovic it's clear, he already said it.
Yeah, so maybe let's talk about the workshop, content of the workshop. So the title is Building Upon Broken Spaces. And that's maybe the reason why we wanted to make it transdisciplinary, and we definitely wanted to have architects. And so because it's about, at the end it's a two-dimensional workshop. We're going to edit these images and results, but it starts by observing, defining what a broken space can be, and also for everyone to define the criteria from when on it is broken, and how many traces I need to make it visible, also for others. So that discussion already was extremely interesting, really, and was for me almost the most exciting part of that workshop, listening to every participant with their experience and why they choose this or that aspect of Bucharest. Bucharest was also a place that fit to that topic. Maybe you can say something about that.
Yeah, so we sort of decided to have this work with this title, Building Upon Broken Spaces, because Bucharest is a city that has a lot of signs of degradation, downgrading, broken spaces, whether we talk about public space or interior spaces. So broken can also mean something in your own apartment. You have a crack in your wall. How this influence you, or if you look through the window and you have like a site construction in front of your building, is this a problem for you? Do you have more dust in your house? You have to clean often. It's noisy. All these questions are also applicable for interior spaces. We wanted somehow to investigate how we relate to the city and how we can translate these broken spaces and degraded three-dimensional experiences that we have in the city of Bucharest in a form of a book. How you can translate this experience in a book where you have, let's say, in between 4 and 16 pages, and how this can say something about you living in this city.
And so that is the first phase, defining, and then the last phase is about extending. So it's not only like taking as witness what we have seen and transferring it in publication. Is also about participating to an extent, thinking about how can we change or not these spaces, and what do we need, which tools do we need to make this visible, understandable. So that is again going back to the role of the book as an investigation tool. That is for me and is for that workshop central question. So everyone started today basically and until tomorrow to find out how can they make these cracks or trace or broken signs better, or make them, changing them. So this phase is also extremely important to see how much you need to change our relationship at the end with these spaces, because I believe that doing this work is also a very important personal work to think about why did that smashed door in my room said so much about another story that happened in my family, whatever. So it can be private, it can be public spaces, so we will see.
I think it's also important to mention that we are here in Bucharest, in Eastern Europe, and we work with this context, building upon broken spaces. One can say that we are sort of exploiting this subject, seen through a Western eyes. Everything in East is exotic, it's broken. It has this character of sort of a maybe also a bit romantic, but also like a degradation of society. But I think it's important to deal with this and see how people adapt, how people modify their spaces, how they reconstruct the way they live, the way they move in the space, and also how the participants of the workshop can adapt to this. To the workshop itself in a way, because we would like to print this booklet in the gallery by using a printer. So we will have one paper, we will fold the paper. So how you can work with something that is given and rebuild your experience in a printed matter.
Yes, I think for me it was also very important to do that workshop outside of the institutions and really specifically outside the school. Also because I believe the school has a huge need to change the structure of teaching, structuring also the fields, and we are now completely free to mix these three readings aspects, or how the architects or photographer or graphic designer gonna answer that question, I think that already is something that will generate 3 completely different lenses of how can we understand it. So I think it's also an important aspect in editorial design, that you have the opportunity to propose by structuring a book a different option of reading. It's not only a mono line from A to Z, from page 1 to however. It is also a 3-dimensional experience, and it has a lot to do with architecture. That 3-dimensional experience allowed you to have different access. As soon it's a room, you can entrance from 4 different sides. Means you can already have like 4 different lenses, 4 different spot of light, and that is something that also motivate me to do books, that the content needs always to have at least 2 lights, and the book can record that, and I think that's why books are also very important in history. They should have this responsibility to give different reading options of what happens, and so
Also a mirror, as you mentioned earlier.
But maybe then 4 mirrors, not only one.
Not
Definitely
only
only one. That is for sure. That's why this workshop was very for us important to make transdisciplinary.
And go ahead.
I just wanted to say that it's also very important that we are pushing the participants to extend their first discoveries, so to modify. It's something that, most of the time you as an artist come with an image and you think this is that image and I don't want to change it, or I don't want to do, but it's important to get out of this sort of
comfort zone,
and do something with it, and this is the idea of the workshop, to get out of comfort zone. Also for us, I mean, I am pretty much out of my comfort zone.
It's your first workshop,
right? It feels good.
It's your first workshop. In that sense, like...
In this formula, yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Like outside of an institution, together with another artist, and graphic designer.
Really cool. And how is it until now? Did you manage to see these different lenses from the participants? Are they really different? Are they, I don't know, do they have something in common, being that all of them are from here, from Bucharest, or are they totally different based on the discipline they come from?
That's a good question. That was also surprising for me yesterday when they brought all these pictures. I think there is a lot of similitude from outside. So there is a lot of pictures about surfaces, cracks on surfaces, different scale. So you can already, like, I would say three people tell from outside it's the same person or the same lens. But as soon you get into the story, as soon you get into what they want to extend and change, then it becomes logically 3 different stories. But that's, again, the image in itself, in our case, is only a starting point, is only an alibi. I would say an alibi, because it's a door that you open in a personal story that you tell. And that's where you can only start telling once you edit. So the images, we might even forget them at the end of the project. We don't know. But the start image becomes dust, is not important anymore.
Also, the structure of the workshop is meant to have half a day of photographing, finding something that it interested you, and then 3 days of editing. So the editing, it's much more, it's a much more intense and interesting process in developing than just spending 5 days, for instance, spending 5 days outside looking for the best picture, best subject, best frame.
Nice. So in this case, the editing comes forward and the picture is on a second level somehow. Do you think it's not only for this workshop, but mainly, does editing, or maybe it can can editing change the meaning of a photograph?
Absolutely. I mean, if you have 10 images, you can put them in 10 different ways. You can have 10 different meanings. I also tell to Ludovic that we as photographers, we photograph more or less the same subjects, but we all tell different stories. And I will add that we also work differently with photography. Whether it's a book, whether it's an exhibition, whether it's now I'm going a bit too wide, but it's also like in printing, how you work with photography. Do you want to print it on a page that unfolds? Do you want to have it full spread? Do you want to have like 4 images in a row? This is all strategies and ideas that should cover the intention.
I want to answer your question differently. Why an image should have a meaning? I hope, you know what my answer is. I hope images has no meaning. I hope they ask questions. They help us to find out maybe who we are, where we live, what are our expectations. Maybe we put the question in another way, like if an image has a meaning, then maybe there is no need to edit it anymore because it's already gone. And for me, an image is always a starting point. So it's always a starting point.
Nice. And I know that we can see the outcome of the workshop this week on Friday at Galeria Posibilă, sometime in the afternoon. So I invite everyone who's listening, or maybe will listen until then, to come at Galeria Posibilă to see the outcome of the workshop. And you can check out the FOI Instagram or Facebook page for more details soon, but Friday is for certain the day to come there. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Yeah.
Cool. I'm really curious about the outcome and how we will see these different lenses on the topic. So guys, I really want to thank you for accepting our invitation to be part of this live stream. It was really great talking to you both, and I think we really had some pretty great ideas that came out here, and some good ideas for the listeners we had and will have in the future. I want to thank Black Rhino Radio and all the team behind this for hosting and helping us with the transmission part. I want to thank FOI Magazine for creating the context of having this live stream. I want to thank the Embassy of Switzerland in Romania and the Swiss Sponsors Fund for the support. And I also want to thank some people. I want to thank you, Mihai, Ludovic. I want to thank Artemis Apascu, Sebastian Pren, Codin Orășanu, Silviu Badea, Andreea Mihaiu, and Mihai Popescu, because all of them are implicated in this, and also Mihai Ciobanu, who is our photographer. So thank you all.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I hope you had a great time. I sure did. And we'll go out for some beers now. So thank you everyone for watching. And this is it for the live stream.
Thank you. See you
Thank you.
soon.
Bye bye.